Hello. It seems there are some people out there, quite a few apparently, who are still giving the Watchtower unique ability and insight into historical matters and chronology. Not just the 15 or so million Jehovah's Witnesses that are out there, but many ex-witnesses, and I don't know who else might fit this description, but there are people who apparently feel that the Watchtower's stand on the date 607 for the destruction of Jerusalem and God's temple on earth is a divinely revealed truth, and in a way it's become a pillar of support for the Watchtower's exclusive claims upon people's religious attachment and adherence. So I myself had wrestled with this issue extensively in the 1990s, and the cover of the tract you just saw on screen, 607 Witnesses Against the Watchtower, was our attempt in our ministry here in Toronto, Canada, to deal with the issue of the credibility of the Watchtower on two levels. One, their historical credibility as researchers, and the other, their ability or inability to tell the truth. That is a much deeper credibility issue. Do they indeed intend to tell the truth, or are they capable of deceiving their own public? The tract that I'd like to send you a PDF of is the fruit of 12 years research from around 1986 to 1998. And since writing it, I now know far more than I did then about the background and debate about the 607-586 controversy, even in Watchtower circles at the higher levels of the society itself in Brooklyn, even before Carl Olaf Johnson came along with his research, which later became the book, The Gentile Times Rediscovered. He had been anticipated in the headquarters themselves by several researchers who were preparing the Aid to Bible Understanding, and found out from their own researchers that there was no credibility behind the Watchtower date 607. Needless to say, their research didn't get into the Aid book, so when Carl Olaf Johnson came along with the Gentile Times Reconsidered, he was not greeted well. If the governing body therefore knew something of this even before the apostate purge in the early 1980s, then that leads me to want to talk more thoroughly about what the credibility issue really is with the society. After all, the 1914 date is one of their two foundation stones, along with the doctrine of the faithful and discreet slave, also unique to the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. So you can understand their extreme reluctance to bring the data, the facts, before their very large public, which in those days was only maybe 2 million people, but is now something more like 15. So their hesitation to even reconsider is understandable, but I can only see two options. Either the Watchtower's researchers are incompetent, or they are deviously covering up the truth regarding what they already know about 607-586. I'd like to read the intro from 607 Witnesses Against the Watchtower, and I'd like to read it carefully, slowly. And I'd like you to pay particular attention to the way the Watchtower words its reasonings and explanations from the document. I will read my words more slowly than I would normally read, and I will read their words even more slowly. This is how I introduced the subject back in 1999. 1 billion publications per year papering over the cracks. For almost 120 years, boasts the Watchtower, its pages have faithfully pointed first forward, then backward, to the date they have not hesitated to herald as God's date, the most important fixed point in the divine plan of the ages. Their knowledge of the significance of the year 1914, especially in advance, is viewed by Jehovah's Witnesses as somehow bestowing prophetic, oracular authority on Watchtower leaders, the faithful and discreet slave. Note the awestruck tone. Quote, this is from the 1975 yearbook of Jehovah's Witnesses, pages 36 and 37. Quote, very noteworthy was the striking accuracy with which that book, The Three Worlds and the Harvest of this World, pointed to the end of the Gentile times, the appointed times of the nations. Just think of it. Jehovah granted his people that knowledge nearly 4 decades before those times expired. And again, a quote from the 1973 Watchtower, July the 1st, page 402. Quote, only God, by his Holy Spirit, could have revealed this to those early Bible students so far in advance. End of the quote. But the Watchtower has consistently covered up the cracked and decrepit condition of its 1914 cornerstone. Not only was the 1914 prediction tied to a chronological miscalculation, which, by the way, has been admitted in recent years, albeit under pressure of critics, but the expectations regarding the date completely failed. With astonishing brazenness, Watchtower writers have attempted to rewrite this history. Quote, this from Jehovah's Witnesses and the Divine Purpose, 1959, page 31. Although this was still decades before the First World War, it's surprising how accurately the events that finally took place were actually foreseen. Unquote. That Watchtower leaders should attempt to buttress their foundational doctrine is not surprising. They have, after all, rested confidently the full weight of their good news on the 1914 last days this generation scenario. Can we therefore be astonished that the governing body has thrown a smokescreen around the most dangerous crack in the 1914 doctrine, the date of the beginning of the appointed times, supposedly 607 BCE? Then I put a subheading in, incompetent research or dishonesty. Reportedly, Watchtower publications have attempted to obscure the difficulties of the... Repeatedly, Watchtower publications have attempted to obscure the difficulties of the 1914 calculation with straw man arguments, that is, deflecting attention from the issue of the date itself by not so subtle swipes at those who hold other dates for Jerusalem's fall. For example, quote, this from the 1974 Watchtower, page 158. Modern secular historians do not generally present 607 BCE as the date for this event, but they are dependent on the writings of men who lived centuries after. That's from Is This Life All There Is, 1974, page 158. And also, this one from Babylon the Great Has Fallen. Quote, we cannot therefore go along with the chronologists of Christendom who date Jerusalem's destruction as occurring in 587 BC. That's Babylon the Great Has Fallen, God's Kingdom Rules, 1963, page 372. I go on. Secular historians, chronologists of Christendom, guilt by association. Watchtower leaders hope will throw the less demanding reader off truth's trail. The alarm should go off when secular historians and chronologists of Christendom are both slapped with the same brush. But there is an additional deviousness about the Watchtower defense of the 607-1914 calculation. What are Jehovah's Witnesses or prospective converts supposed to understand by the careful wording, modern secular historians do not generally present 607? Would not this guarded admission at least suggest to the unsuspecting that there are some supporters for the Society's date, even if they are a minority? But in 1981, the Watchtower became extraordinarily bold in the wake of the research done by Jehovah's Witnesses like Carl Olaf Johnson. This is what they said, quote, based primarily on such secular records, some persons figure that Jerusalem was destroyed in 587-586 BCE. That's from Let Your Kingdom Come, 1981, page 138. And my comment: what should Jehovah's Witnesses and other sincere readers of Watchtower publications understand from this verbal sleight of hand, but that some other persons don't so figure? And do these some persons have any credibility at all? Or are their opinions automatically trashed, as it were, with the secular historians and chronologists of Christendom that they've already dismissed? And who are the mysterious unspecified others, those who we are allowed to conclude would not hold to the 587-86 date? There's that sentence again. I should reread it. Some persons figure that Jerusalem was destroyed in 587, 586. And the final paragraph of my intro. In the spirit of impartial inquiry, we have attempted to compile a representative selection of these some persons. At the same time, we've attempted to locate any other persons who, with Watchtower leaders, challenge the 587, 586 date. All available sources have been drawn upon, whether secular, i.e. non-religious historians, archaeologists, chronologists, or religious, Jewish, as well as Christendom, that is Roman Catholic and Protestant, both conservative and so-called liberals in their suppositions. This is important because the witnesses attempt to undermine those who attack the 607 date by impugning their faith in the Bible. Here follows the result of the last 12 years' research. So then I spend 14 or 15 pages just listing my researches for the previous dozen years. I tapped into all available sources, and when I got to 607 witnesses, I finally gave up, not having found a single support for the Watchtower's position. At the end of the 15 pages of the lists of dates, I quoted from the Watchtower of 1981, May 1st, page 17. Because some would say, well, does this matter at all, really, ultimately? When we were leaving the Watchtower, my wife, Vivian, had this conversation to some extent with her dad about the importance of 1914 to the witnesses, and he dismissed it, as I found several witnesses in my presence did around that time, as of no consequence to them ultimately as to whether they were going to remain Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, this is why it matters. In the Watchtower of 1981, they say this, quote, "Let the honest-hearted person compare the kind of preaching of the gospel of the kingdom done by the religious systems of Christendom during all the centuries with that done by Jehovah's Witnesses since the end of World War I in 1918. They are not one and the same kind. That of Jehovah's Witnesses is really gospel or good news." Now listen to this part carefully. "As of God's heavenly kingdom that was established by the enthronement of his Son Jesus Christ at the end of the Gentile times in 1914. So in the wake of Carlisle F. Johnson and their own staff's researches as to the credibility of the 607 1914 scenario, their response is that our gospel is bound up with this date. Now, flashing back to the Watchtower of 1894, this is what they said in advance of 1914. "We see no reason for changing the figures, nor could we change them if we would. They are, we believe, God's dates, not ours. But bear in mind that the end of 1914 is not the date for the beginning, but for the end of the time of trouble." That's 1894 Watchtower, page 1677. And my conclusion on the last page of the document was a challenge to the Watchtower to call forth its witnesses. I had failed to find any. "We have here endeavored, we believe impartially, to bring forth the best evidence from all available sources bearing on the actual date of Jerusalem's fall to Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. We have failed to find even a single reference from a reputable source, that is, a source that has credibility outside the Watchtower. We therefore challenge the leaders of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society to come forward with a single credible witness who will publicly defend their date for the fall of Jerusalem, 607 BC. Until that time, we stand on the word of Jesus Christ himself. At the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every matter may be established. That's Matthew 18:16, also Deuteronomy 19:15. Why is this important again? Watchtower has made it a matter of the good news. It's part of their gospel, they say. Now, what does the New Testament itself say about the gospel? They have said in their quote from 1981 that their gospel is not like Christendom's gospel. And I can certainly support that thought. Here's what the Apostle Paul says about those who have a different gospel, though. Even if we, or an angel out of heaven, were to declare to you as good news something beyond what we declared to you as good news, let him be accursed. The Greek word is anathema. As we have said before, I also now say again, whoever it is that is declaring to you as good news something beyond what you accepted, let him be anathema. So from the Watchtower's own perspective, and certainly from the New Testament's perspective, what you include in your gospel, your good news, is extremely important, to the point where you are accursed if you change it. So I would strongly urge that those of you out there who are still in doubt about the Watchtower's credibility on this most crucial of issues, because they have made it crucial, central to their gospel preaching, if you have any doubts about it, please send for this PDF document. We'll send it to you. And if you have questions, let us know. We'll be glad to help where we can.